lucky episode 13 of the Score Minnesota Opera's wonderful, new-ish podcast.
6 months?
Yeah, 6 months.
I think we're still in our infancy.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. We're still in the tiniest onesies. But this is Minnesota Opera's newish podcast, all about classical music and opera from a BIPOC perspective. I know we're not using that word, but that's just what
Rocky is just playing.
I'm sorry. You know what I mean. Y'all, I'm so tired. The world is on fire and I'm so tired. Oh my gosh. But, I realized for the last couple of episodes, we haven't actually introduced ourselves. So I'm Rocky Jones, the EDI director here at Minnesota Opera. And I'm here, as always, with the fabulous Mr. Lee Bynum.
Hello, America. I'm Lee Bynum.
VP of Impact. And, of course, the luminous Paige Reynolds, Civic Engagement Manager here at Minnesota Opera.
Oh, luminous.
Luminous.
That's beautiful.
Look at
Hi,
you,
everyone.
you're glowing.
Orange is my color. I'm wearing orange right now.
So,
Orange is your color.
Orange is your color, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, no, you look great. So we've already established that I'm tired. How are y'all?
I'm a hair tired, too. Just a hair. It's been a lot going on this week. But not all of it's been bad.
No,
Yeah.
no, certainly. And this weekend, you both are coming. Wedding reception. Finally, my husband and I are having, well, I'm not calling it a wedding reception because, obviously with all of the COVID business, all of my family and friends from the East Coast are not going to be able to come. So we're calling it the Happily Ever After Party. And then hopefully we'll do an East Coast version of it as well. But y'all, that's a lot. Caterers and photography and we need a box for the we have these little cards where people can write marital advice to us.
Oh, that's what there's been the cards. I thought they were like dropping you money.
Well, I hope. That would be this is not cheap. But where's everyone gonna sit? And is it gonna rain? And the tent? And do we need sides for the tent? And all these decisions that need to be made. And then I'm just so happy that 2 days later we're just gonna get on a plane and go away and go sit by a pool for a week. But it's good and I'm happy and I'm excited about it. But it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
God.
Yeah.
And we had only just started planning the actual wedding when COVID hit. Mm-hmm. So we'd made a couple of decisions. We got the venue, we'd secured the caterer. But we hadn't gotten down to those what color do you want this to be, or should we go with this kind of fork or this kind of fork? And I'm just
I don't know.
I'm not that kind of gay. But fortunately, I'm married to that kind of gay, so he's taken the lead. But yeah, but it's just a lot. It's a lot, and then with the backdrop of the world being on fire.
But this is a bright spot, right?
Yes.
A bright spot
Yes.
in an otherwise strangely dismalish summer.
Yeah, definitely not the hot vac summer I was expecting.
Not at all. It was the only thing about it that feels summery is the heat.
The heat.
That is really
The unrelenting DC swamp-like heat.
Yeah.
Who are you telling? Yes. I really thought I was moving here to get away from this. And I know, right? It's a shock.
This is the first year that I've been here that I've experienced anything like this.
This many days of it being in the 90s is wild.
Unheard of, I feel like.
And it's a drought year. That's an issue.
The drought, I think, is making it worse. And my husband went to high school in Texas, San Antonio. So he has a very distorted view because he keeps being like, the summer's so mild here. I'm like, really? Because I am burning up. But he also has no hair. And I think that probably makes a difference. Under 8 feet of hair. And it's like... But yeah, I'm not cutting my hair.
All you have to do is sprinkle some cool water and you good. And
just not on
it's
the roots.
I remember remember the lock life. Yes, I cut mine off at the beginning of last summer for that reason. I was like, now's the time to be lighter.
Time.
So
Absolutely. Well, Paige, how are you doing?
I'm all right. The world is overwhelming. It feels I just commend anybody who is, I guess, pushing through in any manner right now. But I'm also trying to resist some of the pushing through mindset. Like, it's also okay to not be okay and to just be like, the best thing I can do right now is actually lay down and and just and just do that. So yeah, I'm good. As we were talking about before this, have been working on a year-long course in Caribbean Carnival Masquerade traditions,
which is amazing.
It is.
That is so fun. It's an online class.
Well, I mean, because of the pandemic,
yeah.
I think they were doing it in person before in Trinidad, though. So I wouldn't have been able to take it had there not been a pandemic. They do this in Trinidad in person. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you can go for your final or something. Or you just had your final.
You know what? The course is actually year long. So I think I have one more full masquerade design to do. So the course is design, construction, and performance. So this last assessment we did, I did just that. I took an original idea from design all the way up through construction and making it all myself, or mostly myself. There were a couple of items here and there that I did.
It's okay.
Listen, I'm working on the sewing skills. I'll say that part.
Like every Drag Race contestant ever.
Listen, I feel their struggle in a way that I never did before. I get it. And I commend you girls. I did before, but I certainly do now. Wow. So yeah, and then through performance too, thinking about how is this character vocalized? Does it dance? How does it move when it's out in the street or on the road, as West Indian siblings would say? Then, how is it interacting with everything else around it? So things to think about. And yeah, so it's a year long. I think I have a whole other costume to do.
Okay.
Yeah, a good girlfriend of mine. Shout out to Alana Morris Van Tassel. Hey girl. But she is, I believe her parents are from Trinidad or maybe Tobago, I can't remember, and Grenada. And so she is real into this course with me, is taking it with me as well. She also lives here in Minnesota. So we've talked about taking our final projects out in the street one day. So if you hear about two black girls dancing in the street with the boombox in Minneapolis in strange costumes, it was us. And we'll see what Rona does, but we'd love to go to Trinidad.
Yeah.
We would all
And
love to go to Trinidad.
Someday we will all get to go to Trinidad.
I've been once, and I want to go again so bad. It's just everything. It felt like home. So yeah, hopefully we'll see. We'll see next year.
Can you share the pictures of what you've made so that we can see them?
Happily.
I feel like our audience is also very interested in seeing your handiwork.
Well, I know you wanted to wait until you were able to actually be out on the street and dancing instead of just kind of in your living room.
They don't have to share right now.
Oh, okay. Someday. But yes. I felt very honored that you did show me a couple of pictures of it, and it's super cool.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'll gladly show you two.
But do you want to maybe just describe it and maybe some of the inspiration behind it, because it's fascinating.
Sure.
Just some of the stories you were telling me, and just so many things that I just did not know. So
yeah, I'm happy to share. So, I think first I have to start with just a tiny bit of context for people who have maybe heard of Carnival but aren't familiar with some of the deeper deeper roots. So it is, something that's practiced, I think, all across the African diaspora. You can't point to like one specific Caribbean island or even any one landmass where it happens. Like, it is just a thing that Black people do that very much has like its roots in, West African festivals, seasonal celebrations, all of that. But Carnival in the West especially developed to celebrate emancipation from enslavement, to celebrate the ways that Black people resisted and survived and all of that. Because my instructors for this course are based out of Trinidad, for example, we learned about like the Camboulay riots in Trinidad, where the government tried to suppress Carnival for a minute, and that did not work. The people fought back. They were like, so what you're not going to do is take away our Carnival. And then they just came back like even harder with it. And, there's that kind of histories all across the Caribbean. I think the other important thing to point out before I talk about mine is just that, so a lot of us know what's often called the bikini and beads kind of carnival costume, sure. And the big feathers and being half naked in the street, and that is wonderful. It is absolutely part of it, is the celebrating the beauty and that too, a sexual liberation, also a finding joy and pleasure in our own bodies is an important part of liberation. However, there are also, that is just one like type of masquerade. There is what's often referred to as traditional masquerade and carnival characters that vary across the Caribbean, but some common ones you may see are midnight robbers. They have almost like a Western kind of look to them, and they wear these big hats, and they give boisterous speeches about their skill and their ancestry and how great they are. You have probably seen a oh gosh, I just lost it. You may have seen a baby doll before. You may have seen a jab jab. We were just talking about this. I'll talk about jab jab. It's different types of devil masks. So if you've seen people covered in black paint or what appears to be like oil, or I think in Grenada they cover themselves in blue and have devil horns. That is jab jab. And jab mulassi is one type where it kind of emulates the labor that was done growing and cultivating sugarcane, especially, and just that molasses that would get all over the place, or that enslaved folks were forced to work with. So when it came down to my project, the theme was emancipation, congruent with the emancipation celebrations that happened in early August across any place that was colonized by the British. So, Trinidad, Jamaica, the Bahamas, long list. You gotta do your Googles with some of this, okay? I can't give you the full story.
We are not expecting you to be an encyclopedia.
But I'm always going to attempt to.
I know.
I'm always going to make the attempt. So we were tasked with doing an emancipation mass, and I have been really interested in a jab jab and other types of devil masks. I just was drawn to them. Also, La Diablesse was another woman, a character mainly played by women, played by some men too, that has a whole story of making a deal with the devil, and so that kind of thing. But I wanted something that was reflective of my heritage as a Black American. And I was specifically wondering why there were why I didn't see any devil masks that were mainly played by women. So I decided to create an original carnival character.
Hey now.
Based on inspired by the jab
so
jab.
Cool.
Yeah. And I call her the Cotton Jab. Ooh. So I guess botanically, based it more around cotton, because that was more relevant to our experience with enslavement on this soil. Sugarcane was, I mean, mainly just furthest south, and not as many of us had an experience with that. And also the fact that cotton root bark, little known fact that Black women could use it to prevent pregnancy. So I decided to base my mass around that because it just made sense to kind of play with like this demonization of Black women, to kind of play with this way that like we were our labor was exploited, and like the sexual exploitation that goes along with that, and turn it on its head into something more subversive and empowering. And it's also very like celebratory of I think our matriarchs, especially those that helped like to resist and made sure that we are all still here today. Rocky asked about the horns that were on it, and I think the horns are like directly from like the original Jab Jab and Jab Mulassies, but also because they made me think of different deities in West Africa, like women's warriors deities, like Oya from the Yoruba people. It's actually my guiding parent Orisha, and how they represent an intermediary between life and death. And I was inspired by that phrase that like mothers and grandmothers would say, like, we brought you into this world and we can take you out. So that is what that is really like the spirit of, if I had to sum up the spirit of the mass with like one phrase, like that would be it. Like, I brought you into this world, I'll take you out of it.
I like that.
Yeah, so
I mean, that is just so cool.
Yeah.
And so creative.
Yeah.
thank you.
It's amazing.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it, and really, really humbled that I just get to even have the opportunity to learn from the people who are my instructors, y'all. Like, they are masters at what they do, and they're not like just anybody who plays carnival mass every day. Like, I saw like pictures of them in their work in books, fancy glossy picture books of Caribbean mass before I ever took the course. So it's just a blessing. Yeah.
Well, is there a place possibly, like, if people are interested in seeing some of their work or just learning a little bit more, and we could put like a link down in the show notes?
Yeah. So the institution that I'm taking the class through is called Caribbean Yard Campus. They do like several different classes on just Caribbean culture, and I think there may be one on like patois too that's coming up, and probably specifically Trini patois. But yeah, they're incredible. You can also look up a traditional mass archive on you could just Google it, and you will find a project that someone did. I think Caribbean Yard Campus collaborated on it, which you'll see some of my instructors and some of the people who taught us during the class. They talk about the traditional mass characters, some of the ones they're famous for portraying, like Ronald Alfred. He's famous for his jab jab. I actually had a picture of his at my desk before I also ever took the class, and then he was an instructor in our course. Like, the synchronicities are just amazing. Mr. Valentine Jerry, shout out to him. A wire bending master. You'll see, I think, some videos from him as well. Traditional mass archive. It's where you should go.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. It makes me want to go to carnival so bad.
I mean, well, you could also, not that they're like the same in any way, but the closest thing we have here is New Orleans Mardi Gras. Not just the Bourbon Street beads kind of Mardi Gras, but go to the traditional like Mardi Gras celebrations that they have in the neighborhood. And in fact, some of the characters are even the same, like Baby Doll they have in the Caribbean and Louisiana. That one kind of like transferred back and forth. And there may be some other ones that look similar to.
There's a huge one in Toronto, right?
Oh, that would make sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I remember Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Here I was thinking you read that in the book.
No, I remember Giovanna getting kicked off the Castro.
Oh my gosh. That is funny. Oh, another person after Tracy Sankar, her La Dia Bless was one of the like characters that first inspired me to. That was just like, ooh, like the image just stuck in my mind. I was like, maybe I would try that one day, or try like doing that. And now here I am trying and doing it.
How long had you been thinking about it before you actually decided to take this course?
Gosh, I don't think I was ever like thinking about directly like learning like mass design, but I had like a very close friend in college who's Trini. This was also after I had visited the island, and like she always wanted like us to go to Carnival together. Like always wanted us to go and do like the full shebang, like go on the road with the mass band and costumes and everything. I mean, we just have never gotten the chance to do it. So, but I always had that in my head, and like as life would have it, it just keeps bringing me friends who are, our kin from the Caribbean. So shout out to like Alana, who was also like, has been really encouraging and just like, no, this is your tradition too, to learn. Like I'm always like, I feel like a guest in this tradition. I just try to be respectful of just like, because like y'all you do this, you have the ancestry and just like y'all been doing this, but
no, take it from the two West Indians on the other side of the table.
We are all beautiful black people, and we embrace all of our beautiful black people, and everybody else, and everybody else.
And I was definitely always raised that way. For one, like just seeing all like black people as kin. I guess part of like why I want to be careful is just knowing how much we can be exploited and not wanting to replicate that, like. Yeah.
But you're so clearly describing a celebration of something, right? And I feel like these are the things that we are all supposed to be part of. You know what I mean? I had the same reaction a little bit when I had my old job, and I used to go for a few weeks to Cape Town every year. And the first couple of times I was so conscious of being an American on the continent. And I actually needed multiple people to talk me through not feeling separated from a heritage that I think we all should be sharing in. You know what I mean?
People who are from South Africa had to...
Yep.
Yeah. But didn't you like feel it though? After not... you're like, clearly we're the same
minute
people.
I got off the plane, so I had this feeling... So now I'm actually going on a tangent, but I'll make it super short. When we were living in Hong Kong, my husband was in The Lion King. So, of course, they imported all the black people. And a good chunk of them were from South Africa because so much of the score is in, Xhosa and Zulu and whatnot. And when I got there, when you hear people speaking in Xhosa, I was so convinced I could understand it from their cadences. And they would always tell me, you have no idea what we're saying. But I always knew what they were saying. I can't speak a word of it, but I know that I know it, so. So maybe while we're on the subject of Caribbean culture, we could send some good energy to our people in Haiti.
Oh, yes.
This has been like so weighing on my mind the last few
Absolutely.
days.
Yeah, just take a moment. Maybe just do that. Just take a moment really quick. And we're just sending all of our love, all of our well wishes for gosh, I don't even know, because it's gonna be a long road.
It really will be. I had the chance to visit Haiti maybe 13 years ago, after the earthquake, after a different earthquake, and it's such a beautiful country, beautiful people, really welcoming, generous, and it's just devastating that they have seen this many natural disasters in the last couple of years. Like it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not that I have like any commentary on it, but just like acknowledging that there has also been like recent political upheaval as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
And just like
Absolutely.
I just want peace and safety and just overall well-being for Haiti and Haitian people. Yeah.
Yeah, but we are going to put in the show notes some links so that y'all can go and help out, because they need all the help that they can get.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
and our friends over in Afghanistan as well.
Yeah.
Many of whom
Yeah.
are resettling here in America, and so we will put some links for them as well. And we encourage everyone to just donate what you can, whether that's time or money, and we're thinking about all of you.
And here's to hoping our governments do the right thing in terms of helping the people who need it.
And there's that.
It
And
has
there's
to
that.
be said
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's looking, yeah.
Well, on that note, we will
We
be.
said there was a lot going on in
We
the world.
We did. We said the world was on fire. But we just wanted to just have a chat because I don't think we ever have had a chat on the show just about the work we're doing here at Minnesota Opera and how that all came to be. Our impact department, our equity, diversity, and inclusion work, and we just wanted to just chat about it. So we'll be right back with some history. See you on the other side. And we're back. That was weird. And we're back. I think I was trying to be like a morning radio DJ. And we're back. Sorry, I'm weird. It's a long, hot day, y'all. Here at the Minnesota Opera Center. So we just, like I said before, just we got a lot of questions about our diversity charter and our EDI work. And so, Lee, I know that you were not here for that,
No,
most
sure
of that
wasn't.
process,
Yeah.
the diversity charter process, but you have been here for the last year. So, I guess we could just kind of start at the beginning.
It's a very good place to start.
Yeah, all right. So, really the EDI work here at Minnesota Opera began in earnest about 5 years ago, when our illustrious president and general director, Ryan Taylor, came on with a mandate from our board to really start to think about diversifying our audiences, the artists that we have on our stage, our staff, because when we sort of recrafted our mission statement, so right now I always get this wrong, but which is messed up. But to bring together the community and artists and audiences to create world-class art and preserve the art form of opera for future generations. It was kind of determined that, are we really going to do that if we don't have younger people or more people of color or, people who aren't super wealthy in our audiences? Like, we're probably not going to last too long in, the 21st century. I don't know if, thinking forward 5 years, if they thought all of this was going to happen. The impact department and all of these initiatives and whatnot. But when I came in, gosh, that fall, I think Ryan started in May and I started in November.
What year is this?
2016.
2016.
I started literally a week after Election Day.
Lord have mercy.
2016. And I had left my other job and I started here a week later and I was like, oh, I'm going to have like a nice restful week. Hillary's going to be the president. I'm just going to have a little staycation. And I spent that whole week under the covers. Panicking,
the face
crying.
crack of a millennium.
Oh my gosh. And then like coming here and like meet all your new coworkers and I'm just like please tell me you're normal, you don't over that bad. But all of that aside, I actually started as our web and digital associate. I just kind of came in. I decided to make sort of from where my previous position, I decided to just kind of take like a little bit of a step back in the hopes of propelling forward, just to kind of get my foot in the door. It kind of just, was this amazing opportunity to work for, a cool organization. And so I was like, yeah, sure, I can update your website and send some emails. That sounds like something I can do. And pretty soon after I started, I was told, there's this task force that's being formed with a couple of members of staff, a couple members of the board to really sort of come together and, think of some best practices around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I was like, well, that's cool. But then, of course, I looked around me, and at the time, I was the only Black person on the full-time staff. And I was wow. This is going to be interesting. But, as I've been told, basically, they called up Opera America and they were like, are other companies having this discussion and have any sort of best practices been thought about? And in 2016 it was kind of like, no, but when you figure it out, let us know. And so one of the things that we came up with was this staff diversity council, and is made up of, at the time, all the leadership staff plus a select group of staff members to come together and make some recommendations for what we can do to really create a much more inclusive, diverse, equitable environment for everyone who enters our doors. Not just the staff, not just artists who are on stage, but our entire community. And it was this really cool, kind of exciting moment because, I think when a lot of people think of opera, they think of just sort of this very, staid, stuffy, formal, in order to come enjoy an opera, you have to wear your sequin gown and your tuxedo and be fluent in Italian. And I think we had, tried to sort of bring the art form down from this ivory tower, you can actually wear jeans, you can there are super titles above the stage, you don't have to be fluent in German or whatever, and I think that even that was still a little bit of a barrier, because then people were like, well, what if I want to wear a sequin gown, or what if I want to do my version of fancy, and realizing that that's just that's not quite being inclusive. Just being you can wear your little peasant clothes. That's not what we're doing. That's not what we want to do. But basically, the diversity council, our big mandate was every year to create a diversity charter, to just sort of outline some goals for the year or the next couple of years or whatever. And so that very first diversity charter, we decided that we were going to focus on 3 areas. race, age, and socioeconomic status. And so we came up with some benchmarks. Here's where we are. This is where we'd like to hit. We'd like to have like this many, folks between the ages of 20 and 30 in the audience. And we'd like to have this number of people of color on our staff. And it didn't take very long for us to realize that, like, we had no idea what we were doing. Because it was just kind of like, Black people, you will also enjoy opera. It was like, well, and so realizing that we had no idea how to do the things that we wanted to do. We had the best of intentions. We ended up hiring, realizing that we needed some help. Mm-hmm. So we sent out an RFP to a number of companies here in town that do EDI work, consult with companies, and we ended up with a firm called a POC, woman-owned, LGBT-owned firm called Team Dynamics here in the Twin Cities, who are amazing. Shout out to Team Dynamics. We love them so much. And they came in and they were just like, y'all need to heal yourselves before you start going out there talking about how woke you are or whatever. And they have, come in and for the last 4 years just worked with us on an organizational level, a departmental level, individual level.
Yes.
Really just kind of telling us about ourselves in the kindest, most generous way, but clear
right.
and real.
Or just sometimes going, you think that? Why? Why do you think that? Just examine a little further. Yeah.
And it has been it's been a journey. It has definitely been a journey. And I think for a lot of people here, it has brought up some stuff that they just never really thought they were going to need to confront.
Especially at work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of this industry. Yeah. And how, especially folks of color, because we all know that race is the difference that makes a difference here in the United States of America. And how white supremacy has really permeated just everything that we have ever done. Yeah. And this entire thing, this entire classical music, Miss whatever her name was last week, her. All you have to just sort of see are some of these attitudes about just sort of our place as people of color in this industry, even though we've been here the whole time.
The whole time.
Making an impact, changing the direction of things. Mm-hmm. But the way that we have been excluded, I think it was a hard adjustment for some people to really sort of have to look opera. Oh my. Forgive us. I think there's some construction going on. I thought we were safe here in the studio. Well, if you hear any construction noise in the background, at this point, there's nothing we can do. So.
Act like y'all ain't hear that.
Yes. But long story short, one of the things that it really led to was in those diversity council meetings. Oh, and I should probably mention that I was the vice chair for 2 years, and then I was the chair of that council, and Paige was a member of that council as well, for a number of years. And so what we really wanted to do was, rather than sort of have these quotas and these numbers that we felt like we wanted to hit, what we really finally came to after all of this self-exploration, this self-awareness work, what are we doing that is actually actively affecting this community in negative ways, and what are the ways in which we as Minnesota Opera are like upholding white supremacy. Well, we don't want to do that anymore because that's like flies in the face of what we value as a company. And so what we wanted to do is throw out sort of the quotas and just articulate why we want to do this work and how we want to do this work, how we want to show up, how we are more than just an arts institution, that we are a civic institution. And because of that, and because the community is, you know, helping to keep our doors open, we have a responsibility to all of the people from, you know, the Mill District to North Minneapolis to East St. Paul, to the governor's mansion. We have a responsibility to represent all of those people in everything that we do, and that all of the spaces that we create, to create spaces where people can feel safe, where people can feel as comfortable as is appropriate. And to just really create just sort of an authentic sense of belonging, so that like we are not saying that like you need to change anything about yourself to come into our space, to learn, to enjoy music, to work here. You get to just be your full, beautiful, authentic self in all of its forms, and still be a part of Minnesota Opera. And so that led to our diversity charter, which, and also we had our former marketing manager, Amanda Rodriguez, was also on that council, and she's amazing, and I'm sure hopefully she will be on the show
good idea.
sooner rather than later. But at the beginning of that year, I remember she came into the first meeting with a giant stack of papers.
I will never forget it.
Slammed them down on the table and was like, EDI is over. We're talking about anti-racism from now on. And I think a lot of people, like myself, like included, were kind of like, anti-racism? Oh. Well, that sounds big. And she came in and she just like kind of read us the riot act and was just like, this is where we need to be focusing our efforts. And I think because it was so, I think like at the time, obviously now in 2021, and especially, you know, after George Floyd's murder, you know, we all, anti-racism is not sort of a fringe idea at all. Yeah. But I think in like perhaps fall of what year was that? Good God. Years? What are those? I guess 2019? Yes.
2019.
Fall of 2019. We all were just kind of, like, I think mainstream, a lot of us were just kind of like,
I was like, it sounds like something I'm on board with.
Yeah.
Say more.
Say more. I mean, like, I am totally
anti-racism.
Yes.
Okay.
But there's just like a lot of people that are just like, well, can't it just be like pro? Anti just seems so negative. Can't it just be like pro equality?
Because that's worked so well, right?
Yeah. And we were all like, well, in this world, in these days and times, especially after May rolled around, it was like, okay, explicitly anti. We need to, yes.
Well, I remember for me, like, after that first meeting, I went and did the Art Equity National Facilitator training, which anybody in the arts who is interested in doing this work in a serious way, I cannot recommend it, like, strongly enough. It changed my life. Like, I would not be nearly as efficient and effective in this work if I had not done that. It just builds your confidence. And I just came back and I just sat down in this room and I was like, okay, so we're doing anti-racism.
Get on board, girls.
Get on board. No ifs, ands, or buts. And by the end of that year, that season, March 2020 happened in the middle of that. And, kudos to Ryan, because I know when big catastrophic things happen, like I remember reading an article, and they were interviewing Anita Hill, and I forget exactly where I think maybe she was in Hollywood. She was consulting somewhere, but she was talking about the 2008 recession, and that they had convinced all these studios and production companies to create programs for writers of color and producers of color, to come in and like actually get to be in a writer's room or like develop a project, like these sort of apprentice programs. And as soon as the recession in 2008 hit,
They all stopped.
they all stopped.
Yeah.
That was the first thing on the chopping block. And so I was really scared during the pandemic that, like, because we had, Paige and I and two of our colleagues, Diana Konofka and Jake Fedorowski, were sort of the primary drivers of the project. And so we had written this charter, we had, put it in front of the full council. There had been some tweaks and, things here and there. We'd put it in front of our incoming board chair, Nadej Souvenir, Sina Hodges, who is an amazing EDI consultant here in the Twin Cities, the woke coach, check her out. Also an art equity alum. She came in, she suggested the artistic statement of purpose that's in there, which just kind of tied the whole thing together. We are committing ourselves to anti-racist and anti-oppressive practices and all that we do. This is what we mean, but we're not just talking about race, we're talking about all the things, and here are all the things that we're talking about. Here's how we plan to approach it. And then March 2020 happened, and it was just like, my God, all of this work, is it going to go down the toilet? And luckily it was like, no. In fact, we are going to just like hit this even harder, because it's just kind of clear that, like, we don't know how long we're going to be, locked down in our houses. Whenever we emerge from this, we're going to need this document more than ever. And so I'm very grateful that I work for a company that felt that way. But yeah, and then, presenting it like to, leadership, and then, presenting it to the board, and then having the board unanimously ratify it, which was amazing.
That's a big one.
Which was incredible. During such a sort of fraught, awful time, because, the board didn't get to it until May. And actually, they ratified it, and then a few days later was when George Floyd was murdered.
Wow.
So, I think a lot of people look at the date on that document, and, it didn't actually become sort of public until a few days afterwards. And so I think a lot of people are like, oh, you just released this statement because, of, this murder and the riots and all this stuff. And it's like, no, I promise.
This is the work for months.
This is the culmination of like 5 years of really hard work, and we actually believe this. And this just underscores why we feel like, this is so important. And of course, then that led to a restructuring of the company, which led to the impact department, which led to, our incredible lead Bynum coming aboard, me moving into the EDI director role, Paige moving into her new role, and
a lot of moving.
And here we are in 2021, and now we've got a whole bunch of people of color on the staff, which, I mean, for me is the thing that is so, like, gratifying, because, like, to be, like, the one Black full-time employee, and then to come into work now 5 years later and just see, like, all of these beautiful Black and brown faces and Asian faces, just, all throughout the building. And, like, whenever we are, doing productions again, to see more guest artists of color walking around the building, it's just been such a, like, oh wow, okay, so this is actually happening. And that, like, everyone is really taking it seriously, because I think one of the things about articulating our values is that there have been a few people who looked at that and were like, well, actually, those aren't my values.
Yeah.
And they,
Peace
showed themselves out out the door.
Yeah.
So that everyone here now and everyone who comes aboard like understands that like, no, this is a part of your job, whether
For sure.
You're sewing a costume, you're sending a marketing email, you're building a set, you're the EDI director. that this is a part of your work.
Yeah.
That these values are just something that when you walk through those front doors, and even when you leave,
Yeah.
are just, something that if you want to be here, or something that you subscribe to. Yes, subscribe to. So, yeah, I mean, I think that brings us up to sort of maybe about a year ago. But yeah, I mean, Lee, how did it feel for you coming on in the wake of all that?
Yeah, it was really interesting because at the time I was interviewing at a lot of arts organizations because I knew what kind of job I wanted, and I knew I needed to move to an organization that wasn't paying lip service to the values, and a place that was actually going to exist in a space of self-reflection and really sit with, how do we want this to show up in the art? How do we want this to show up in the staff? What do we want our audience to get out of it? What does it mean to be a purveyor of art in 2021, right? Like, what is that thing? And it felt differently real here than in a lot of other places that I interviewed. And I honestly felt like people weren't just taking it seriously in the context of work. I felt like people were living the values here. And it made a huge difference in terms of how I prioritize thinking about this particular shift, which is not one that I was anticipating. I used to always say that Elaine Stritch quote, "I have never left Manhattan and I never will." I did not think I was moving anywhere, especially all the way across the country. But it was so clear to me when I saw the job description that I wanted to come here. And I think that's hard to do. Job descriptions don't usually give you that kind of a thing. And I've had absolutely no regrets. I mean, we'll see what happens in January when there's 3 feet of snow on the ground. But short of that,
just get a good pair of boots. You'll be fine.
I'll be in my apartment. That's where I'll be.
Or you could just not leave your house.
Yeah.
Just not.
I mean, that's what we're trending. So. But it's been such a beautiful thing to see the willingness people have across the company. Like, and I mean that, like, from, development to production to artistic, to see people taking the time to put the thought into how do we live our values here. And it hasn't been work that has happened without effort, right? It's been years of work, years of labor, lots of people putting in emotional, intellectual energy into creating something new. But it's really quite powerful to see that commitment, and then on the other side to get to experience from the artist and the audience members who are coming in, the people who are tuning in virtually for the last year. This is work that really resonates with them, right? And we've had a couple of opportunity to do some focus group style things to get some information from people, and people are really invested in the change that they see here. And it's a place that I have a lot of pride to work here. And I've liked all of the jobs I've had. That's why I've had them. But I haven't necessarily felt like a personal level of pride working at an institution that I felt like was reflecting the place that I want to be in my life. So it's a lot of gratitude that I have for this experience, and really for the openness that the community has shown. And of course, it's not all uniformly positive.
No, we are not hanging up the mission accomplished.
No, we are we're absolutely not. At the same time, though, like the openness is what I've been looking for, right? And people haven't been responding with the, absolutely not. I'm not participating in this whole everybody being equal in this space. Like, that's not what I've been seeing, and I'm really grateful for that.
I also think it takes like some acknowledging the good things that have happened or that y'all have done, just to sustain the energy to keep that energy you need to keep going. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, not saying we're done or anywhere anywhere near it. Especially if you look at like the outside world too. We're clearly gonna have always a lot to do.
Always. Always.
But yeah, like it feels good to like have these moments where we like, it's interesting for y'all, of course, or partly for y'all to, tell the history or where we've been. But I always get something out of it as well. Just like, oh yeah, we accomplished that together. Mm-hmm. Like, oh yeah, it came a long way. So
yeah, I mean, giant steps forward.
For sure.
Like, not even like baby steps, like giant steps. Like, just the fact that the three of us are in this room in this moment.
People who don't work in opera and all, but maybe are fans or familiar with classical music or in general and its history, all the time comment to me that just like, oh, you're Black and you work at the Minnesota Opera. Oh, good for you and good for them. Like, that is the comment that I get, and I'm just like, yes, and there's more than one. I'm not the only one, and then they're just even more shocked. So,
matter of fact, we hired 2 people of color just today.
Like,
I mean, that's a whole thing, and I feel like the fact that this unit is growing at a moment where it feels like the field itself isn't necessarily growing, right? The fact that the organization is putting in a lot of resources into doing the work. And I think that's very telling. And I think that's why there is this kind of story to tell here, right? It's not just let's slap a thing on social media and then proceed with business as usual, right? People are actively trying to think about, what does it look like to be actively invested in the community, and like taking it seriously, what it means to be a cultural anchor in a place, right? We have the name of our state in our title. That means we're supposed to be doing the work of everybody in Minnesota, right? So,
and one of the cool things about Minnesota that I have discovered that I did not know before I moved here was the degree of respect that they have for artists and art making.
Boy,
here.
do they.
Yes.
I mean, it's incredible.
Yes.
I mean, it's even like on the East Coast, even New York. Like, I remember this moment, we've talked many times about, growing up and all of us making art and whatnot. And I sort of, fell off a little bit, like in my early 20s. And I had 2 friends who decided right before the recession in 2008 to just throw caution to the wind and quit their jobs and backpack around South America for a few months. Yeah. That wasn't fun for them for a while upon their return. But I actually just weirdly looked at my bank account and like happened to have some money for once. And I remembered I was at my mom's house and I was like, they're going to be in Buenos Aires in November. Like, I can afford a ticket down there. Should I just like go? And she was like, yeah, you absolutely should. So I went down and I stayed with them in Buenos Aires for 2 weeks. And I just remembered this moment. We stayed in San Telmo, which is like kind of the artsy neighborhood, and every day you can go to San Telmo Square and just like see people just like dancing the tango in the middle of the square and selling their wares, and they have like an art fair every Saturday and you just walk through and people are like selling like beautiful paintings and beautiful. I remember we were walking through and this woman was just like, hola. And I turned around and it was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life. And I was just like transfixed, and she was like, oh, would you like a bracelet? And I was like, uh-huh. and I reached out my wrist, and she took it, and it was plastic, and she took out a lighter and burned it on, like burned the ends together, and then was like, 10 pesos please. And then another one of my friends like came back, and she was like, what are you doing? And then saw her, and she was like, hi, yes, I want a bracelet too. but so many, I could talk about Buenos Aires for like a million years, but we had this one experience where we got on the subway, and at one stop a man with a guitar got on. And I'm so used to like being in New York, being in DC, like, who's ready for a show? Right. Like, no. I'm going to keep reading my book. Please don't look at me.
Everyone literally acts like they're not there.
Yeah.
Like,
while people are like doing like somersaults and flips. Like, in front of you. It's showtime. Like, but this man got on with a guitar, and he began playing and singing, and literally everyone stopped what they were doing. And put down their books, stop their conversation, and just like listen to his song. And then when he was done, everyone in the car applauded, gave him some money, and then he went off to the next car. And it struck me like, oh wow, this is a culture that really respects their artists, like understands that like when an artist comes into a space and they are playing for you, they are creating something for you, like that matters. And it matters what they have to say. And I realized that I had never really experienced that to a degree. And like moving to Minnesota, like I kind of get that feeling again.
That's a beautiful thing.
Like to be able to just sort of be an artist and to create and to have people not only like, just listen to you, but fund you. Like that arts funding is in the state constitution here, is this amazing thing. And I just think we just have such an opportunity to bring so many more people, so many more voices to the forefront. Like there's so many people that have so many incredible things to say. There's so many composers who have written such beautiful, powerful, effective music that, we just haven't heard for a variety of reasons, but, that we are actually here committed to bringing those people to the people. It's just so cool. It's just such a cool thing.
How much of a joy is it that we get to do that for a living, right? I was thinking about miniatures a few days ago when I was scrambling trying to make a meeting turn up on my calendar that just was absolutely not happening easily. And even in the moment of being very frustrated with my own schedule and not being able to have the meeting, I paused and I thought about, this is a meeting to talk to a group of underrepresented composers who are each creating a piece for Minnesota Opera. It's a beautiful thing that gets to be, scheduling that is the problem of my workday, right? I mean, it made me really, really happy to think about what it means to be able to share opportunities with people, funded opportunities with people.
It is one of my favorite things. I tell people sometimes, one of my favorite things is getting to hire you. One of my favorite things as an arts administrator is getting to put your name in that budget to say this artist's work is going to not only be presented, but funded. It was one of my favorite things where like my first like full-time job was working for the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. It was a government agency, and I started as an intern, and then because of staffing changes and stuff, I ended up managing a whole grant program, y'all. So
sounds like DC. That sounds right.
But one of the most beautiful parts of the job, I mean, and honestly, like, sometimes frustrating, was just that you are one of the stewards of these public funds that you get to directly be like, here's how you apply for the money. Oh, great, you got it. How exciting. Like, to actually, like, go to events that you are part of helping the person get that grant so it could happen, and to, like, hear your friends say, oh, yeah, I went to such and such art festival. And I was like, they're one of my grantees. Like, it's the most exciting thing. I wish that all places and people like viewed it that way. That we can agree that that's a beautiful feeling and a beautiful thing to see. But yeah, it's one of the best parts of the job.
It is.
It is. It is. Even though we're all kind of like making opera again in our living rooms, like there's still something beautiful about the fact that we figured out how to exist in this kind of space in the pandemic. You know, it's never lost on me how many of my dear friends who are arts administrators for all kinds of organizations were either furloughed during some part of the pandemic, or were just still working for an organization that wasn't able to solve the problem of how do we continue to create right now. But I think it's telling that we did a survey here recently, and the survey came out and said something like 75% of the people who work here identify as artists. And I think that really communicates.
I think it was higher than that. I think it was like 85.
Even better.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that says a lot, right? This is artists attempting to do things to support other artists. And I, you know, having done the whole New York singer-actor thing, I know that the opposite is more frequently true than not.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yeah. And what's so, like, fascinating about it, too, is, you know, like you just said, you know, we had to sort of start making opera in our living rooms, and, like, how does that all work? But it did.
It sure
and
did.
We've actually, even though we've, you know, sort of become a little bit more isolated because of COVID-19, or a lot more isolated, we've been able to open things up so much more, so that we're able to, like, offer performances for and programming for free. You know, so that like, you know, even like that barrier, you know, like, well, okay, maybe I don't have to wear a tuxedo and a sequin gown and be fluent in Italian, but I still have to pay $100 for my ticket. That's like, no, actually you don't. You can just go to like eminopera.org and like watch, like, you know, Wuthering Heights or Das Rheingold for free. If you want to give us some money, that'd be great. But
in your bathrobe at that.
Yes. Your bathrobe and slippers, and just like sit down and just like enjoy. You know, and it's just being able to like open that, or just kind of demolish that barrier is just like fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, what you said about, you know, some people, friends who are arts administrators and were, you know, unfortunately like furloughed, or, you know, their company just didn't have much for them to do, didn't know how to adjust. I feel like there's also a faction of people who quit or who transitioned to a whole other industries or started doing their own thing because they're like, I cannot get with the way that y'all are operating during this time of crisis. Like, it's just ethical. It's just against my ethics and morals, and I cannot do it. I know like lots of people who had that realization too, and especially being at home with, you know, environment that's more curated in a way that helps you stay, you know, peaceful and a good state of mind. They realize how actually like toxic their work environments were. Arts organizations included. In fact, I'm mostly thinking of my friends who are a part of arts organizations. So like I think about that like I'm grateful to like be at an organization that wasn't just like, yeah, we're just gonna wait till this is over and then do things the exact same. Like
right. Exactly. Exactly.
Or like better, or like, yeah, we're going all through this and like however our employees get through. Oh, well, like, good luck.
They'll figure it out.
We're gonna do what we need to do. Y'all do what you need to do. There were places that did that too.
There were plenty of places.
I mean, I think like one day I'd like to have some sort of like discussion or on here about, you know, what it looks like when artists, administrators, I think across the board, there are, you know, people who are just like, I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, predominantly historically white institutions that refuse to change. They're just like, I'm not doing it, or I am doing it, but as a consultant, and you got to pay me a whole lot more. Or I'm moving industries to where I can use this similar skill set and maybe have better pay, or who are like, I'm going to create my own company. I'm going to get together with these people from marginalized communities also, or who want a different organizational structure, who don't want to work those 10 out of 12 days. Yeah. So there's a whole discussion about that's going on, I think, especially among people of color, like, and more of us talking to each other and being like, you know, sis, you actually don't have to like go through this. I mean, yes, like on a certain, like, sure, financial level, like maybe you can't just walk out tomorrow. Right. But like, those are the conversations we're having with each other. So I think it'd be cool to talk about one day, you know, what does it look like when these institutions fail to change? Because it is happening.
Sure. For sure. It's the present and the future, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there's sort of this idea among certain folks that, like, you know, because it's a nonprofit arts organization, it's not sort of, you know, there aren't any sort of capitalistic aims, or it's not upholding white supremacy or the patriarchy in any sort of way. And it's like, no, this is still, you know, a company in America.
In America. How about that?
People who are Americans, not everyone, but but a lot of folks. Yeah. And like, we just need to reckon with that idea. And I think one of the nice things is that we are reckoning with it and then saying, like, actually we want to be like a little bit more people-centered and humane. And, you know, that goes for our staff and our artists, of course, but that also goes for our audiences.
Yeah.
Like, we want to create environments where, like, all of you all out there feel safe. And that you can come into a space and watch a show and not be emotionally violated in some way. You know?
Yeah. Like, for example, it's exciting to me to hear, like, development people in our company, like, talking about the work they're doing. Because I was like, that's usually not the team, like, you hear from a lot in arts organizations in terms of, like, we're going to look at, you know, what our sources are, what we're applying for, like, thinking about that as ethically as possible. I was just like, like, that is so exciting, because I think, you know, a lot of folks also want to do the EDI work, but not talking about money, or not talking about their budgets, or not talking about their donors. And I think that's a place where you can often look. We're just like, oh, you think there's no white supremacy in this organization? You gotta look.
Well, if you're
like,
if you're not doing the work, like, if you're not doing anti-racist work when it comes to your budget, you're not doing anti-racist work.
No,
you're just not.
Absolutely. And it's, you know, I feel like the Ibram Kendi quote about either you are actively anti-racist or you are actively racist. Like, there is a truth in that. Either you are doing the work against it or you are somehow propping it up. And there really isn't a middle ground. And I think I think especially, like, living through the 90s, where people were trying to exist in this space of, you know, political correctness, but not really adjusting any behaviors or structures, we really got to see that the middle ground was making it worse, right? And so much of what we experienced in the last couple of years, I think, are from people not being willing to say, this part of what we do is broken and we need to move away from it and just figure something else out. And that's, to me, that's the hallmark of somebody actually being invested in change.
Absolutely. Well, the work is hard, but it's rewarding. And, you know, and I know I say this every week, but I just feel so lucky that I get to do this with the two of you.
Aww.
You know, and that we get to like be here and just like share the story, and you know, so hopefully that, you know, clears up any misconceptions about some of the work that we're doing, and I hope that inspires some of you all to kind of check us out.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, we want to create spaces where, you know, you don't have to feel like, you know, less than just because you don't know everything, you know, under the sun about Verdi or Puccini or whoever, that you can just come and enjoy a cool show and learn some new things, and hopefully be around a whole bunch of, you know, people that look like you and share your values. So that's all we wanted to talk about. But with all that said, even though it's been quite a murky 2 weeks. There are still things to be joyous about.
Yes.
There are. And we're going to highlight them. So we'll be right back. And we are back. And it is time for our favorite segment and yours. It is time for Pure Black Joy, PB&J.
Yeah.
Hit it, Paige.
Peanut butter jelly
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Peanut
yeah,
butter jelly time. I feel like I need like an air horn button to just like carry around at all times.
And Lord knows we need it. So I will turn it over to whoever wants to go.
Tell me something joyful.
Well, I'll give a little bit of opera-related news since we are talking about opera in an opera center right now. Famed contralto Marian Anderson, one of America's first well-known African-American opera singers, is finally getting the tribute she deserves in her hometown of Philadelphia. She is getting a statue right outside of the Academy of Music.
Yes.
This will be the first ever statue devoted to a specific Black woman in Philadelphia, which yay, but also really. I mean, but nevertheless, we are better late than never. Very, very excited about it. The work has largely been shepherded by Jillian Patricia Pirtle, the CEO of the National Marian Anderson Museum and Historical Society.
Okay.
And it's taken 25 years
Wow.
of lobbying, raising money, convincing folks, but it's finally happening, and I'm super excited about it. My husband went to conservatory in Philadelphia, and when we were on the East Coast, we visited all the time. I have a lot of dear friends there.
I love Philly so much.
I do too.
I have a lot of dear friends too there. And it's just such a cool town.
It really is.
Oh my gosh, the food alone.
The food,
If I
the
lived
people.
in Philly, I would be. You'd have to carry me around in a wheelbarrow if I lived in Philly.
But it's also like such an extraordinary music city, right? One of my other favorite singers, Miss Patti LaBelle, is a Philly native, and I feel like everybody from Philly can sing. And I know that's not actually true. It may just be the people in my circle, but there's something about the city. So
I had to think about it, and I was like, yeah, every person. I'm pretty sure.
Actually, everyone that I know who lives in Philly is a musician
Right,
or a
right.
singer. Like, actually, that's actually true.
So I'm hoping in a few years there will be a Patti LaBelle statue, maybe a Jill Scott statue, Teddy
Philly from
Pendergrass.
Philly, yes.
I mean, they could make a whole statue garden of all of this extraordinary
That's a
talent.
wonderful idea. Who wants to make the Philly Black History Sculpture Garden? I will visit.
I will visit,
Or a
too.
long statue walk.
Yes.
Let's go for a
Let's go.
long walk.
That would be
The
perfect.
statues after dark.
And
I'm
the
so
Roots.
sorry.
Did
I'm
you
so
think about
sorry,
the Roots
Jill
being
Scott.
from Philly too?
Right,
And
right.
they're so influential in hip hop. Like, wow.
Yes. And
they commute every day from Philly to New York to do the Tonight Show.
do they really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
They still live in Philly, yeah. Or at least they did at the beginning of the Tonight Show.
Right. Maybe those checks have changed over the years.
I'm sure if you're Questlove, you can probably just hop in a helicopter and go where.
Right. We don't know how they're commuting.
That's the thing.
They're on Questlove's jet, okay?
Yeah, no, they are not on the Amtrak Regional Express.
But while we're doing a little bit of pure black joy, I have a little bit of an extemporaneous one. So a few days ago, I didn't pick it up. I pushed a button and it came into my iTunes. Jennifer Hudson as Aretha Franklin is everything that you think it's going to be and better. I don't know why it took them 40 years to cast Jennifer Hudson as Aretha Franklin, but it's the best thing that's happened. Period. End of story in my iTunes in a very long time. So I encourage everybody to... I'm not encouraging anybody to go to a movie theater right now. Yeah. I'm encouraging everybody to get on
like
iTunes.
An on-demand option, HBO Max or whatever.
I'm waiting for that. I mean, when I say I love Jennifer Hudson, like I love Jennifer Hudson. And I also mean it when I say I'm not going to a movie theater right now.
Yeah.
I'm just not. Yeah. But when it's on HBO, I will watch it 3 or 4 times just to make up for not seeing it in theaters because I'm so excited about it.
Well, I mean, why did nobody think of this in 40 years? Because it took Aretha to be like her. Right.
She was waiting. Yeah, she was listening. And she's like, not you.
Beautiful gowns.
Great gowns. Beautiful gowns.
Beautiful gowns. Beautiful gowns.
And when she said Jennifer Hudson, I knew. I was like, that is perfect. Yeah. That is perfect. Yeah. From the voice down to the way I know she portrays a Detroit woman in her furs with accuracy. I just know. I can tell. I saw Dreamgirls. So, yeah.
I don't know. I was scrolling through Twitter a couple of nights ago, and I just saw the funniest tweet, and it was just a picture of that night that Jennifer Hudson, Fantasia, and LaToya Luckett were in the bottom 3.
Oh my gosh.
The caption was just like the most chaotic night ever in America. I remember that.
I do too.
Like it was yesterday.
I do too.
That had to have been a pivotal moment in my development of just like, so this is how America treats black women.
Oh, absolutely. It was like, if you don't believe in anti-blackness, you believed in it that night because it made no sense.
Yeah, all of these Fox News people, like, go back to that night. If you don't think anti-blackness is a thing in America, that is crazy. Diana DeGarmo. Are you... Girl.
That moment should be studied and written about. It really should.
Sorry, Gen Z.
We should have known right then that America was headed in the wrong direction.
George W. Bush in the White House had that happening on American Idol. Insane. Well, if I may jump in really quick, I have a pure black joy that is a personal pure black joy, if I may.
You may.
Well, last Wednesday, August 11th, 2021, was the birthday of Miss Eula Jones of Beaufort, South Carolina, who is my grandmother, Leo Queen, and she turned, y'all, 101 years old. Can you believe it? Amazing.
Go ahead, Miss Eula.
And my dad was down there, and he was like, yep, she is making herself some toast right now. She's still going and with it, and she, God willing, will be with us for years to come. But it's just so amazing.
Really
a black woman in America, 101 years old, all the things that she's seen, raising 4 children, so much of that by herself, working as a nurse. It's just,
it's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. And I'm almost just kind of speechless about it because, she's, just always been so loving and encouraging of me, and I'm her youngest grandbaby. And she's just always been such a constant font of just amazing wisdom. And I will never forget. Apparently, it's this rite of passage for all of us. I didn't know this at the time, but she'll sit us down and play a game of checkers with us, and just sort of see how we play checkers. And of course, me being the psychopath that I am, like completely just like kicked her butt, and then was like, "I'm so sorry, I'm sorry," because I can't, even with my elderly grandmother, I can't seem to turn that off. And she was like, "Don't ever apologize for that. You won. I gave you the things you needed to win." And so she's just amazing, and 101 years old. Like, what can you?
That's something.
You know,
that is something.
So if there's anything to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely celebrating her.
Yeah, they miss you, Lou.
So, I think that's it. Can we leave this very hot room?
It's roasting in here,
so hot
friends.
here. Oh my god.
I think so.
A little behind the scenes. All
My
right.
only tiny pure black joy is
Oh,
that
yes.
I got a new black neighbor, y'all.
Oh!
Right?
I want one.
Right? Okay, y'all got to under context. We live in Minneapolis. Remember
There we go.
that. Remember that. So it was just an exciting moment. Like I came in the house, I was like to my other roommates, guys, there's a new black neighbor, and he's nice. He said hi to me first. Like, he doesn't act like he doesn't ignore other. He's black and he knows he's black. Just had to share that tidbit. It
Well,
brought
that's a
us
beautiful
all joy.
thing. That's a beautiful thing. Well, hopefully, like, from neighbors to friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He already suggested. Maybe he's not from Minnesota or something, because he already suggested to one of my housemates. They're like, "Yeah, we should hang out. Like, we should. Yeah."
Where is he from?
That's what I said. I said,
Huh. Interesting.
exactly. I mean, I'm happy, and I'm also curious.
Maybe they're from, like, the West Coast or something, where they, you know, smoke a lot of pot and are happy.
Gotta be.
We'll see. Well, you'll have to update us next time.
I will.
All right.
I will.
And for all the rest of you out there, make sure that you say it with me. Subscribe. Share with your friends. Please leave a 5-star review.
5 stars.
5.
Pause.
5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cinco. Cinq. 5 stars on Apple Podcast. Leave a review. That really helps us out. It really, you know, all the algorithms and things, you know, gets them to pay attention to us and gets us in the ear holes of more people who need to hear Black people talking mess about classical music. And I think that's it. Oh, and email us at thescore@mnopera.org. We want your questions and your comments. Mild criticisms, I suppose. No racisms, please. And yeah, and I think that's it. I'm going to Palm Springs, y'all. I'll see you in 2 weeks. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.